Hello everyone, it's September 4th, 2018. It's Tuesday, it's Harp Tuesday. And a year ago, almost to the day, I got this lovely Excalibur Camac harp. I did a video at the time, you should be seeing a link here somewhere, just kind of talking about my initial impressions. I thought it would be kind of fun to do, not necessarily a review, but just give you my experience of having had it now and played it for a year. And I think oftentimes when we're looking to buy instruments, we can feel like we don't have a lot of information, right? It can be a tough decision. I remember somebody posting and asking, was it an easy decision or a tough decision to get this particular model? And the answer for me, at least, was it was a tough decision. It wasn't just a no-brainer, and I'm very happy with how it's turned out. But at the time, I think I mentioned in that video, I kind of fallen in love with Excalibur, having played on one at the New Jersey showroom of the Virginia Harp Center in 2016. Just the feel of these thin gauge, slightly lighter strung fluorocarbon strings. The sound, of course, but also just the feel. It was such a fun, and is such a fun, instrument to play. But it wasn't a no-brainer. There were certain criteria that I was looking to fulfill in terms of getting a new lever harp last year. And I think oftentimes we might all have slightly different goals when we're looking at a new instrument. So what's the right instrument for me might not be the right instrument for you. And for me, I was looking primarily for something to record. I just published 5 solos for lever harp, and I wanted to record those. And I wanted a better instrument to record them on. And actually, this is to celebrate because it's been about a year since I released this. It's on sale. You're the first to know. So link here somewhere to check that out. And I have an Aoyama lever harp that I started on, and it's, for what it is, it's a great, super reliable, very light, easy to transport, but the sound's not amazing. And so I wanted something that I could record these videos on and that I would be really happy with the sound. Also for Harp Tuesday, there have been times when I could have recorded a Harp Tuesday episode on lever harp or pedal harp, and I've chosen to do it on pedal harp because I wanted that better sound of my pedal harp. I remember doing an episode on Deborah Friau's arrangement of Scarborough Fair. Something like that. Beautiful piece. I think I actually initially learned it probably on the lever harp, and perfect for the lever harp, but I ended up recording it on the pedal harp because I wanted that better sound, a sound that I was more happy with. So I wanted a better harp for that, and for the music videos, for Harp Tuesday, and as a bonus for my students, it's nice for my in-person, obviously not for my Skype students, but for my in-person students who play the lever harp, nice to have a slightly better instrument for them to play on. So the Excalibur was kind of my first choice, but I did have some sort of doubts about it. And basically that boiled down to the weight, sort of the size of the instrument, and the cost. So for cost, I mean, I think they're fantastic value for what you get, but the majority of the playing, like basically all the professional playing that I do, is on the pedal harp. So for me, it was just a question of, is it worth it to me to spend this amount of money, or could I potentially spend less on a harp that's maybe not quite as good, but that would still serve my purposes. And that's always a tricky balancing question. I mean, and the weight thing was a definite concern. I think this weighs about 30 pounds. It's a heavy instrument, and I really experienced that last year giving workshops at the Somerset Harp Festival and using an Excalibur and carting it around. And it's a heavy instrument. And since one of my primary goals was to record these videos in Victoria, of the 5 solos for lever harp, did I want to get something that's not necessarily ideal for moving around outside a bunch? And so one of my thoughts was maybe I should instead get, say, a Dusty Strings Ravenna. I like Dusty Strings. They're right across the ocean from where I live. I live in Victoria, BC. Seattle is just right across the ocean. And the Ravennas are quite a reasonable amount cheaper and lighter. They don't sound as good, but maybe they'd be the best option. Trying to sort that all out. And again, we're often dealing with sort of an information shortage when buying an instrument. I think particularly with the harp, because we don't always get a chance to play and compare and contrast maybe the harps we're thinking of buying. I know, for example, my pedal harp, 1992, I guess, Layne Healy Style 30. We ordered it directly from Chicago, from Layne Healy, without having played it, because my parents and I couldn't really afford to fly down there and try the harps. And so just, asked them to pick out a good one. It shows up, and you hope it's good. And ideally, right, I would have had a Excalibur and a Ravenna, and maybe a couple other Dusty Strings, and maybe some Thormelins or whatever, all in my house, and try them out for 2 weeks, and be able to say, okay, yes, this is the perfect one in terms of all the factors: the sound, the feel, the cost, the weight. This is perfect. But instead, I have to make a decision based on the limited information I have, and that's probably the case for most of us. So in the end, I decided to go with this, and I'm super happy that I did. So the sound and the feel continue to impress, and it's just super fun to play. I'll talk about that in a little bit more in a moment. The weight issue, it is an issue. You've seen that there's that video that I showed of carting the harp up Mount Doug Park with some friends, and a dog runs away with my shoe. But that was a trek. More recently this summer, again with a couple helpers, it took it on I think a 1.6 kilometer hike, and of course you got to hike back as well. I actually used a golf cart, a little, not a motorized one, but a one that you wheel along. It ended up being perfect. But even so, it's a heavy instrument, right? It's a heavy instrument, so it's not ideal, but is worth it. For me, I feel that trade-off has been worth it. I'm willing to lug it around, and just because of the sound and the feel. And I'm just so happy playing it, and so happy with the results. But again, I don't really need these extra strings, right? They're nice to have. I enjoy them. I'm working on a piece right now that goes down to this low A, and it's fun to have, but I could do without it. I'm not looking. It's not as if this was sort of, I only play lever harp, and I have a harp that I just want to have at home. I'm not going to move it a bunch, and I want those extra strings, extra sound, extra resonance. I was looking for a more portable harp, but the trade-off for me has turned out to be worth it, and I'm okay with that. What other things have I learned playing it over a year? So it's a little bit actually, I talked about the weight, but it's a little bit shorter than I would prefer. So I would actually like to be potentially even a tiny bit lower than this. And I know some people might play with it all the way up down here, but I just don't want to sit any lower. Even as it is, the stool that I'm sitting on is too low. My knees are a little bit above my hips, which is not ideal. And so for me, I would prefer to have this be just a little bit higher. One of the nice things about, say, the Aoyama that I started on, or some of the Dusty strings, they have the removable legs. You screw them on, and you can get various sizes, which is fantastic. Of course, you can build something to put the harp on to raise it up a little bit. But I'm 6'2", right? I'm pretty tall, so it is a little bit short, but not enough to bother me. But just something, if you're 6'4", you might end up having to put something under the harp to raise it up a little bit to get an ideal height. The sound is developed really nicely. That's the thing, of course, is quite a new harp when I bought it, and as the wood settles in and gets played, I feel initially, and also partly because the strings were so new, especially the wires, as I talked about in that episode about how often should you change your strings, I feel it's mellowed a little bit. It was pretty bright, a lot of overtones initially, and it still has a lot of that, but I feel I like the sound potentially even more now. So definitely happy with how the sound has developed. And for me, I guess one of the neatest things about getting this harp and having had it for a year is I felt so inspired to play more lever harp. Just because, again, that's one of these things that it's hard to know initially how you say, okay, well, I could get this slightly cheaper harp, or maybe this quite a bit less expensive harp, and maybe it's not going to sound quite as good, but is that worth it? That trade-off. And for me, just having this harp just invites you to want to sit down and play it and have fun with it, and it sounds so great, and it's so much fun to play that it's absolutely been worth it. And it's been so fun to just have it sitting there and saying, come on, come play me. So I think, right, I wanted to talk about the fluorocarbon strings because, again, I love the feel, but partly I think it's because of this. It's strung about, I think, 4 notes thinner, 4 strings thinner. In other words, this G would normally be the gauge of a C, so it's a thinner gauge than we might be accustomed to, and so maybe not specifically to do with the fluorocarbon, but partly also the string, the gauge of the string. And the fluorocarbon strings in some ways are a little bit annoying because the new ones take so long to stay in pitch. And I have had some breakages. Now, I didn't have any breakages at all in July and August, which is great. So maybe things are settling in. But I had more than I initially expected because somehow the sort of impression I had of fluorocarbon strings was, they're like nylon, they last forever. And my experience has been that they've been a little bit more like gut, that they do break. But we'll see. Again, I haven't had any break in the last 2 months. I have a student who bought a Excalibur last year as well, and she as well, I think, has experienced kind of initially a number of breakages, but now in the past little while, not very many or none at all. So anyway, that's just been interesting to have a harp with this. Again, I'm more familiar with nylon or gut, but not with the fluorocarbon. So maybe I'll play you out with try to do some little improv. Let's Let's try F, maybe. And thanks for watching. See you in a couple weeks. Cheers.